You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming podcast, episode 4, Best Laid Plans. Today we talk about what happens when your players go off the beaten path. How do you adapt to this change and eventually circle them back around towards the main story? We address some techniques and strategies for adapting without stonewalling your players. At the end, we do discuss what happens when your players decide they aren't interested in the game at all. If you like the podcast, want to join the discussion, please send us an email at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. We'd also appreciate a subscribe, review, or just tell a friend about the podcast. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming podcast. My name's Aaron, and across from me is the international man of mystery, Jared. How are you doing, my friend?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm doing great. As everyone knows, you can give us your feedback, talk to us by contacting us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you like the show or you like what we're doing, subscribe and share the podcast to your friends, because that's how we're growing this podcast. It's pretty organic at the moment. So.
Very organic.
So anyways, how you been doing, my friend?
Not bad. First, before we begin, definitely want to provide some shout outs to some people who have been downloading us. So we just wanted to say hello to whoever downloaded us in Caiaphasstein, in the Western Cape of South Africa, the city of Westminster, England, Brea, Kentucky, Seattle, Washington, Mountain View, California, and Somerville, South Carolina. We just want to thank all those places and those listeners for downloading.
Thanks for listening to us, and we hope you continue to listen to us. And like I said, subscribe, share. If you got other friends who game with you, let them hear the podcast. Let us get their feedback. Let us answer their deepest questions about how to level up our gaming and how to do game.
That was such a shameless plug.
Oh, shameless plug. Oh, we're gonna do it every podcast.
How to level up.
How to level up your game. I'd be like. So the other day I was going through the drive-thru and I was like, I'd like one level up your gaming with that. All right. Well,
so what's the topic again for today?
The topic for us today is best laid plans. What's the saying go like, Jared?
The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry.
Yes. You always tell us that. What do you mean when you keep telling us that?
So you can't predict the... Unpredictable, I think it is. Not
unpredictable?
Unpredictable?
I think it's the unpredictable.
I still haven't mastered English. Speaking of my mom.
You were a history teacher, so I mean...
Yeah. Wasn't an English teacher, although I'm certified for it. But off track. Mice laid plans of mice and men often go awry. So no matter how greatly we as storytellers, dungeon masters, game masters, I think there's new... gaming system that's come out that I'm hooked on. I've been reading all their books called The City of Mist. They call it the Master of Ceremonies.
Oh, the Master of Ceremonies. That's interesting.
So shout out to City of Mist. I think you guys have made an awesome system there. So no matter how well we do it as storytellers or whatever particular title that you want, unfortunately they often go awry. Our players, we intend them to go down the right tunnel. They choose the left tunnel. And we have not planned for that. We think they're going to assault through the first floor doors. They decide to do a dynamic entry through the second floor windows. Hadn't planned for that. You think that they are going to assist the other group of heroes. This is, I think, a lot of more D&D players, more D&D DMs will understand. You think they are going to assist the other NPC in solving this mystery, and instead they shank him and rob him.
Yeah, I mean, this is how things often go in the game, and I've been a player more than I've been a GM, so I've been a whole part of
throwing the shanking.
I've shanked your players. I've thrown spokes in the wheel. I've watched the kid fall off the bike. And I've laughed at him. So I'm familiar with all of the I'm familiar with all of the things that I've done to ruin games for you as a player, but also as a storyteller. And when I was actually, before I got into this current set of games that we're telling, I was actually not very good at handling this situation which is like I said, when you guys went off the rails, I was like, what the hell do I do? Like, I'm lost now.
Right. And for me, rule number one, because we always focus on solutions. Rule number one, don't panic.
Yeah. No,
don't panic. Take a deep breath. So this is something that I've noticed a lot of times is my mind will start racing. Slow it down. There doesn't have to be the rush to a solution. It does have to maintain. You do have to maintain an organic feeling to the game as you come up in your mind. You almost have to split it in half. You need one part of your mind developing what's going to happen down that left tunnel, and you need one part of your mind focused on what your players are doing in the present. So almost a planning mind and a present mind.
Yeah, and we'll get more into this in an episode that we're going to do for planning ahead of this. But the problem is that you only really get, and I mentioned this in the Gathering podcast, you only really get two places that you get to really interject like your full command of what's going on in the game. That's the Gathering and your ending.
Absolutely.
Okay? You get to design the ultimate showdown with the villain, and you get to decide how you're going to set up your characters. The rest of that then is your characters running around like cats, basically, and you're trying to herd them in the right direction by giving them the right amount of information they need to have to get to the end.
Exactly. For those for the more general thing, you need to, as a storyteller, remain flexible. When if a boxer sits still when he's getting mashed in the face, he's gonna get knocked out. How boxers avoid that is when they get hit, they roll the head to allow the blow to deflect. So same way with your players. You need to be okay with rolling your head, allowing them to deviate from the set course that you've created. You might have had a pattern. Okay, I wanted them to go to point A so they could get the information to go to point B. They did not go to point A. They went to point C. Flexibility is the talent of taking point A and making that point C.
Oh yeah. No, you got to be very. We thought about calling this episode "Learn to Dance," but this is kind of the whole situation here, and then the thing that you will learn more as you practice storytelling for a group is that the more you're like, hey, listen, they're going to get where I want them to go regardless. So I mean, like don't fear that like the moment that they go off the beaten trail, like they're lost. Okay, like I'll put it in a D&D context for you. If somebody goes off on what you would call a side quest, okay, I'm putting air quotes up around that.
Thank you for that visual.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, in a podcast form, visuals go a long way. So, but
I'm smiling
during that moment when they're on the side quest and they're doing their thing. This is what you would if Jared wants to expand upon it further, he called it his fun phase. I'll let him get into that in a second. But while they're there at the end of it, you can give them a major clue to get them back on track. If you're like, I don't want them to go on another side quest. I want them to get back on the main story.
Precisely, and that is a huge point, and especially in the context of the fun times.
Yes.
Because when players go off the beaten track, as a storyteller, you need to almost interpret that as your players having a conversation with you. Whether or not that it's them saying, we don't like your story and we want to go explore other things. You might have to take that subcontext. It could be just, we're not ready to engage in the deep dark yet. We still are looking for fun and levity. And when they break off to that point, probably the best example that I ever have of this is when Aaron and Brian, in one of my games, probably my game that I'm most proud of, it was called Elders, they broke away from the storyline very organically. My players said, hey, let's go to this location instead of this one. And we developed a great story out of that. And that is something that storytellers need to be able to do, is say, okay, they want to go down path B, let's develop that into a fun story. Because remember, as we've always pushed upon, is you got to keep it fun. It's got to be fun for the players. And if you're just blocking them from C, and they really want to go down C, what objective are you accomplishing?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the right attitude to have, which is if your players are looking for another story, a la a side story or a side quest or something that is not, it's just that they have not engaged enough with your main story. And you got to remember that when you develop your game, your game should be like, is my main story a time sensitive story? Because if it's a time sensitive story, the clues that you give them or the hints and pushes you give them to get them to the end of your story have to be extremely blatant and obvious, and like the threat has to be very apparent that the players cannot afford to go off to that little town up in the Kusha Hills or whatever. I mean, like,
Again, with the fantastic
yes,
names.
well,
Kusha Hills.
I've got a gift.
You do.
So,
Tell me about their culture, the Kusha.
you know, they're small tribes people. They
And this brings me to my next point. That actually was not completely pointless. In times where your players go on path B, it's in time to, rather than panic, enjoy your creativity. I just looked at Aaron and said, tell me about the Kushla people. Well, apparently they're small tribal people. Cool. Tell me more about them. I want to explore. What kind of houses they got?
Exactly. I mean, by doing that, you cannot. I mean, you can even take it a step further because they're part of your overall world. So, do you have a big baddie who's like afflicting the world as a whole? Maybe they have a different experience against that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you can show your players a whole different side of how. How the bad guys inflicted pain and suffering upon the world, or are these people oblivious to this whole thing? Maybe they've curried favor with your enemy, and maybe they can then become, as Jared said, if you're creative, maybe it can become a major facet to your story, this little side quest thing. And I think Elders has a great example of that in what you just mentioned, us going off on our own and doing the thing in Indiana. Indiana became a much bigger thing than I think you could have ever imagined.
Oh, it became huge. I mean, they ended up as part of the epilogue because they were so cared about at the end. That side story, I and correct me if I'm remembering it correctly, we eventually went back and did a whole nother chapter.
You created a whole nother chapter around it. Like, that side story spawned your creativity to create a whole nother section of the game that brought us back to experience the overarching thing. Like, otherwise we would have never gone to Indiana. I don't know how you would have executed that. We maybe would have never gotten through the game had that never happened.
It was definitely an opportunity, and that's how you have to see those times that players break from the plan. Yeah, the plan. You have to see it as an opportunity. Get creative. Have some fun with it. In those first initial steps, for example, it's the start of game. So for us, that's 7 o'clock Saturday. We're rip roaring ready to go. I've got my stuff out. I'm ready for them to go to location A. They go to location B. Part of that panic management is when they get to location B, all I've got to do is survive the night. I've got to survive 4 or 5 more hours of them being at location B. So my creativity has to go into overdrive, absolutely. And I get creative, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy the opportunity. But then, at the close of the night, that's when I have my opportunity to go back, look at the Kushla Hills, and what magic do I want to make there?
Which is, that's the key to everything, is being able to. So, I mean, the best thing is that your players, as much as you'd like to believe that they're the smartest people in the world, know nothing about how your game is supposed to be executed. So if they go to the Kushla Hills, you have to just make it seem like that's what you intended all the time. Like, this is everything. So you can build your story around the Kushla Hills. Does it ruin your story? Does it make things worse if it happens in the Kushla Hills versus in the main city of Praxis, exactly. So like that's where that's where the game started. That's where you guys were gonna do all your stuff, but then you went off to the Kushla Hills. You jerks. Like, are you going to prevent your players from doing it? Because I guarantee you this, the thing that I hate the most as a player is if I go to a place and I get stonewalled, like do not go.
That is huge. Storyteller rule. Don't stonewall your players like that. Okay, I shouldn't say that, because if you're going to stonewall your players, stonewall them creatively and silently. Never put up obvious barricades.
Yeah, don't make it so apparently like bad that we had gone to the Kushla Hills. Don't be like, oh well, everyone in Kushla Hills is dead. Like, well, thanks. Like, thank you a lot for being so creative with that answer. Like, now maybe Praxis is on lockdown. Okay, like that's a way to keep us from going to the Cushla Hills. Does that mean that your players will not spend every inch of their effort trying to get to the Cushla Hills?
To those locations. For me, it separates the good storytellers from the great storytellers, and leveling up your gaming is focused on getting you from good to great. Are you going to have the level of detail that you might see some storytellers on YouTube be able to provide? No. But you don't see behind the curtain of that production in YouTube, where the players and the storytellers all have pre-meetings and they know what they're going to do. That's a production. Fortunately, I have a brother who works in the movie industry. The magic is gone for me. I know that they have production meetings and everything that's going to go. You don't have that unless you sit around with your players and pre-plan how the session's going to go, which would be a little odd.
It would be very weird to do that. I mean, like, yeah, they are productions, and I would be remiss to say that they do not have. Yeah, that's a good word. I would be, because I don't believe that these productions have as much like, oh, we just sat down and started gaming, today. No, you talked about it. Your players all their players have an innate sense to follow what the storyteller wants them to do, because it looks good for the production.
It looks great for camera.
It sounds good. It makes it entertaining. And even if you get off topic a little bit, like, it's super easy to round it back in, because you're trying to fight for the goal. So, like, but your players aren't going to be that kind to you.
They're not. And the thing is that you don't have that opportunity, so don't pretend that that's the bar. Because that's just, it's a different sport. That's an entirely different sport. You have at hand your players, and they're going to make decisions in snap moments that completely negate everything that you have planned. And instead of the bar being how detailed can I make this world, remember to set the bar at how fun can I make this world. How well do I know my players? How can I take that and say, okay, I've got Aaron and Brian, and now Aaron loves to smash stuff. He really doesn't, actually. He's very easily hooked with a mystery. I could put a red door in a building, and he will spend hours
like a dog to a steak. I just like
jiggling the knob. Let me in.
Let me in.
Having that mystery is what hooks him. But it's that opportunity to have, okay, well, I got my character who loves to break things. Let's put some guards in front of the Cushla Hills, because it's the home of a warlord.
Yeah, and your players are going to get hooked on things that you don't expect them to get hooked on.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
They're going to get hooked on, like, little details that you're like, why the hell are they going down this path? But you know what? You got to go with it. You got to indulge that excitement. Okay, Jared, put a.
You're about to go with bags, no boxes.
Bags, no boxes. Okay, we fought this guy who was this brain monster. He had like an exposed brain or whatever, and it was very creepy and weird. And then we explored the house like to no end. And I found all these bags of cereal, but there were no boxes. Okay, and I spent an hour trying to figure out what the hell was going on here. Like, why on earth would he have gotten rid of all the boxes and just left the bags?
Just bags. They're bags, no boxes. Again, this is your players engaging in your game. I looked at it and I was like, Aaron's lost his mind, In all reality, my player was excited and wanted to know. And how dare I not dance well enough to be like, well, clearly, let's make a mystery out of this sucker.
In that same game, you also led every time we would hear a siren go by. For some reason, you kept doing it, so I got very intrigued by it, and so I started chasing sirens.
Yep.
Okay? Like while we were in the Indiana arc.
It was because that was the virus starting to hit humanity.
Yes.
That's why there was always sirens. It was an epic little sprinkling of stuff. And that's, and that's something we'll get into when we talk about planning your sprinkles. But if you have those little sprinkles prepped, maybe the NPC or your major bad guy has an emblem that he marks everything with. Why can't that be on the coinage of the Kushla Hills?
Exactly. You get, like I said, your players have no idea. So as long as you don't panic,
as long as you don't
panic, and as long as you sit there, you're cool, calm, and collected. The thing you have to think to yourself is, okay, I didn't expect them to go to the Kushla Hills. Okay, who are they going to talk to when they get to the Kushla Hills? Do you have to have so we use a tool called Roll20. Okay,
love it.
Some of you may have heard of it. And one of the things that we've done is we've incorporated a lot of NPCs with pictures in Roll20.
Yes.
So one of the things that we do know is that if you encounter an NPC and we don't have a picture for that NPC,
clearly
the GM didn't plan for it, or they're not important. Okay, so like we know that as a metagame thing outside with the GM. Now, what you can do really quick is if your players go, we want to go to the Kushla Hills, they're not just going to be like, we're going to the Kushla Hills, and they start walking that way. You can be like, okay, you're going to Kushla Hills, who do you want to talk to? And so you can put in that NPC before they ever have an idea that NPC existed.
Famously, actually, it was last session that we did with our detective game. My players said, well, we want to go talk to the ER doctor who worked on the Grand Duke. And I was like, oh, man, I did not make that guy. There is a great website out there if you run modern games. Sci-fi might be a little bit more difficult. Definitely with fantasy games, there is so many images out there for fantasy characters. It's very easy to just type it in, dwarf human character concept art, grab one and pull it in. But for modern games, These People Don't Exist is a wonderful tool. I'm not quite sure the web address. I think it's thesepeopledon'texist.com.
I want to say that's it. Yeah, Ken told us about this website. It's actually really good.
It's a fantastic.
It's a great resource because basically what it does is it aggregates a bunch of pictures from the internet to create a fake person.
And it's quick, it's adaptable, and you can make those NPCs very quickly. But I lost my train of thought on that one.
Well, I mean, let's talk about some of the other problems then that we encounter when your game goes off the rails. So, for example, let's say your villain ends up in a situation where your villain could die before the penultimate conclusion of your arc. How do you avoid that problem, and how do you resolve that problem?
So we talked about this a little bit in Building a Better Villain.
Yeah.
Building a Better Villain. Always have that escape plan. No matter what you do, wherever your villain is located, make sure there's a helicopter within reach. Make sure they've got a trap door. But really, with those kill moments that are deciding factors, so they go off the rails, you didn't expect them to kill the villain. You expected them to, capture the villain.
You expect them to listen to the monologue and let the villain walk away.
That contains the next clue. Just remember in those moments when players literally chop off a limb that you've got planned, and there's no other webs leading there. Don't think that that's the end. There is no such thing as living in an isolated world. Somebody else has that information. Somebody else has that piece.
Exactly. I mean, you can always get your players to the end goal, no matter what. I mean, you can always get your players to the end goal, no matter what. The problem is if you think only person A can give you the information. If your game is so inflexible that only person A can give you the information, you're going to have a huge problem, when your players, because what's going to happen is the other problem that your players are going to do is your players are going to go, they're going to take the information you've given them and they're going to formulate a different story in their head. Okay, nobody thinks like you. Nobody understands the game like you. That's why I said it's got to be a one-shot short game. You got to smack the players with the answer, basically.
Yep, it's got to be a road sign.
It's got to be a road sign. It's got to be like turn left here because the villain lives in that house. It's going to be like a blinking neon sign like villain hideout.
Turn right.
You're like, this can't be that easy, but it is.
And it's funny how sometimes that you will create those things and players will go on path B. You expected a full frontal assault. And then when you put up the big blinking sign and they think it's too easy, then they get all very tactical on you. I've seen it so many times with Aaron and the guys. They're like, I don't trust this, and they go very, very slowly into that dark night, and a one-shot game can turn into a three-shot game very quick.
But that's the exciting part. Like, you got to view every time that your players do something that you don't expect them to do, or they go against the plan, that you then view that as an opportunity to say, whoa, I got more here in this game than I thought I had.
It's like when my players go left, it's like a treasure trove. They release me from the bonds of the story that I have planned, and they take me to this welcoming world of weirdness, and I cherish these moments. They are really fantastic moments. But one thing that I did want to discuss with and it slipped my mind earlier. Step 2 to not panicking, because it's easy to say don't panic.
Yeah.
Some people they're really good at not panicking. I've been through so many games. I've had so many games go up and then so far down that I don't fear failure anymore, because God bless it, my friends are my family, and they love me despite all my flaws. But one helpful tool for new storytellers, and I encourage you to remember this: when you feel like you're going to panic because my story went left, remember one very important thing: you are God.
Yes, you are God. The GM does not just stand for Game Master, or DM does not just stand for Dungeon Master. GM often is referred to as God mode. Okay, like you are God in your game.
Exactly, and it's just remember, just because the map you created didn't have any mountains to get to the Kushla Hills, I think we're still using. To get to the Kushla Hills, I will put mountains in your way to slow your ascent, and there you will find a tomb of dwarves. Oh shoot, I just turned your path B into a several step process to get to the Kushla Hills. You can build mountains out of air with your own creativity. Just because it wasn't on the original map doesn't mean that it can't be there.
Exactly. You get to do that, and I mean, for as much as we use the tool Roll20, and we put up a bunch of maps and stuff, the way we did it before we ever had a whiteboard or a map, we just described it.
Notebook paper.
Dice, we described it, yes. So, I mean, like, there's always a way, and just like Jared said, you get to put stuff in the way that makes it harder to do that. And so if your players are like, they're buying everything you're selling, okay? And they're like Kushla Hills 100%, I don't give a crap about the arch wizard and Praxis, okay? The Kushla Hills, like, you get to put all that there. You get to build this awesome story, and it will still be an awesome story because, again, if your players have fun, they're going to like the story no matter what. That's the win. Like, at the end of it, you get to tie it all back in, because if you let the players do that, we brought this in with the Gathering episode, but when the players feel like they have the agency within the story, like they are creating and finding the end of the story,
engagement wildly goes
yes up. So this is going to make for a better game overall for you. It just makes your players go like we're in control. You're not like being super inflexible about anything, and we're solving the problem by doing this thing. Okay, and maybe they don't solve the problem by going to the Kushla Hills, but the Kushla Hills gives them enough information that they're like, damn, the Kushla Hills was afflicted by the Archmaster and Praxis as well. We got to go back to Praxis.
We got to go back to Praxis.
And we formed all these bonds in the Kushla Hills, and
I fell in love in the Kushla Hills.
We'll be damned if that Archwizard
destroys my marriage.
Yes, destroys my marriage, and destroys my children, and destroys my people in the Kushla Hills.
and it came out of the players making a decision and you accepting that decision. Accept, don't panic, see it as that opportunity. And man, get creative, and don't forget you're in God mode.
Yeah, you're in God mode. I mean, you get to create the story. And we talked about some of the problems, like your villain goes awry, your players go off on the uncharted path there. Now, there is a point where your players may go way down a rabbit hole that you're like, this could be its own game in a sense, Okay, and so you have to make a decision there. Okay, which is how much of a because you might also want to like put red herrings in your game.
Oh, we
So
can talk about red herrings.
how bad do you want your players to get lost in something that means nothing? Okay, so there is a point when you typically want to rein it back in, or you want to connect it to your main story. So those are the two options that you basically have.
And that's important to always keep in fact when your players have gone too far, and they completely lost the main story, and that is a story that you want to tell. Because don't forget, your own happiness is part of this. Are you happy on this path? You want to ring them back? Ring them back. Let them have their fun, and then start pulling it. By the way, with Roll20, I wanted to remember this. Yeah. I had discovered something last session.
Okay.
With the NPC problem. So if you guys use a digital, guys or gals, I apologize, use a digital whiteboard out there or a digital program to run your storytelling. I figured it out last time how you can avoid if there's no picture or NPC, they don't matter.
You just use a different NPC.
Nope. Load up your file with about 10 random pictures with no names attached.
So you smart bastard.
Drag them and drop them into there. They're just because all they are is faces. But I know we're coming up to closing time, and it's closing time.
Well, we still have a little bit of time here.
I was a child of the 90s, can you tell?
But no, I mean, like I said, you want to use everything as an opportunity. There is a fine line between saying like this thing is so far off the main story, I can't see any way. This would be like so that you got the Cushla Hills, you got Praxis, and the players are like, we want to travel to the other continent and go see the like that's not happening. Okay, like you have to be able to, that's the point when you say like best laid plans, like that has nothing to do with the plan. That's you just saying I don't give a crap about this story.
And in that, what I would highly recommend when your players want to take that drastic deviation to another continent, they want to take the plane flight to a different state or city. One, it's a conversation in yourself. Do I just want to make my plot in the different continent? The plot that they haven't gotten so far, again, turn B into C.
Yes.
Another thing that you have to look at is, why are my players doing this? Why are they going off track? Is my story bad?
That's always a question you have to ask yourself. Is are they just not engaged with the story I'm telling?
And that can be an honest and open conversation with your players. Just at the end of the night, be like, hey guys, I want to know, are we interested in this story? And if they look at you and be like, no, okay, and hopefully they say it a lot better than that because they consider your feelings.
No, your players are jerks. They're gonna be like, no, we don't want, no, we don't like this at all. No, go back home. Boo.
Go home. I am home. Good, stay there. So if they're gonna go to that other continent, is my story really what my players are looking for? And then another thing you want to do is, how do I crane them back in? If it is the story they're looking for and they just realize they're going off to the continent for some other reason, crane them back. How do I softly crane them back? Will the ship take a month? How can I re-engage? There isn't a ship ready to go on the next continent. Yes, okay, with modern days, it's a lot more difficult because, like, I will wait for the next flight. Well, there's a storm in Buffalo. Sorry, guys.
All flights are grounded.
Again, this is the harsh shutdown, but take that harsh shutdown.
If you're listening to this, I urge you to go back to KYP, know your players, because KYP will help you avoid this problem altogether. But I mean, if you give them a clue for some reason and your players start going bananas and start thinking that it's off in the other continent or the other state, and like that's where the answer is, like you've probably given them a bad clue.
Right.
And you need to find a way to shut that down or to stop things. It's like, I mean, in modern nights, you've got news. Mm-hmm. You're in the airport. You're going to be taken. You bought your ticket. You're ready to take off. CNN comes on. Back in Buffalo, back
in Buffalo. And I guess I went with that hard shutdown. And it's funny because earlier I advised against it. Hard shutdown, but a soft landing. something, a well-known ally, somebody that your players love.
Mm-hmm.
They love this NPC. Run to them at the gate. Guys, this happened.
Hey, we need you here. Like, this happened. You got to come help us out.
Make
like,
that dramatic moment.
make them feel like heroes in that moment. Make them feel like they are absolutely needed there. It's imperative that they stay.
And it's not something outside the realm of reality. There are many people who get to the gate and then they turn around. I've watched enough romantic comedies in my life to know this.
Well, Jared knows better than all of us, so.
Romantic comedies. Boom. Don't judge me.
But anyways, I think we've said a good amount on this
Yep.
subject here, and we appreciate you guys listening. If you want to give us any feedback, once again, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you like this episode, the show, go ahead and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. That'd really be helpful. I would love to generate a discussion around this and hear what you guys would like to hear about going forward. But for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.